Hello, everyone. I feel like I know most of the people on this call, but in case we have not had the pleasure to meet, my name is Femi Madi. I am a staff rep with PASNAP, and I work with our wonderful moderator here, Joe Moyer, at Einstein, and I also work with the wonderful people over at Wills Eye Hospital. And today I'm going to talk to you about using social media to build your local. So I'm going to share my screen very quickly. All right. Can everyone hear me all right? Good to go? Great. So using social media to build your local. Are you a digital organizer? Does anybody out there consider themselves to be a digital organizer or have used online or digital tools to organize in some way or fashion? Not limited to labor or organizing through your union, just all different kinds. Feel free to jump in and say if you have or not. Well, I guarantee you that a lot of you have in the past in some way, shape, or form. So I feel like the screen probably looks really familiar to a lot of people. Well, maybe not the cell phone, but the background with Facebook and all 111 notifications because we are all incredibly popular. But I'm sure that everyone here has created probably a Facebook event for a friend or a loved one, birthday party, retirement, weddings, some kind of celebration. And maybe you're part of a Facebook group for your community, your neighborhood, your block, whatever it may be. If you've done one of these things, joined a group or participated in a Facebook group or created some kind of event where you've had to let everybody know what's going on and contact people and send out these invites, and you have engaged in some form of organizing. Maybe not in the traditional sense that we all think about it, but that is technically a form of organizing. So why is social media important for unions? There are two main ideas that I believe really demonstrate why social media is important for unions. And the first one being social media is ubiquitous. And the second one being that it creates a collective identity. So to really understand these ideas, we should talk about them. So social media is ubiquitous. The advent of social media is helping to deliver a full realization of the World Wide Web with Web 2.0. So before we go any further, let's quickly discuss those two things: the World Wide Web, Web 2.0, and the internet. So the easiest way to think about this, if you don't already know, excuse me if this is like something that's very common knowledge, but some people don't. So really quickly, easiest way to think about it is that the internet is just a system of connected computers and devices. And the World Wide Web is all of the web pages, websites, apps, all of the different places you go to while using the internet. So if we want to kind of contextualize it a little bit more, the internet is the vehicle and the World Wide Web are the places that you visit in that vehicle. And Web 2.0, specifically that term, when we talk about this thing called Web 2.0 and how social media has kind of, in a way, really revolutionized the internet and the World Wide Web. Web 2.0 specifically means the interactions that happen on the web. So, social media has made things it's changed the web in a way where can communicate and interact with each other through these apps and websites and different places online. So it has just made it a social web. Communication. Uh, Greater reach and accessibility. With the arrival of the internet, barriers in communication, reach, and accessibility are not nearly as prevalent as they were just a couple decades ago. So connectivity, just like we just mentioned a minute ago, rigid communicative boundaries are easily overcome, leading to expansive forms of solidarity, collective identity, which we'll talk more about in just a minute, and mobilization simply through viewing a post or joining a group online. So that kind of sounds like an oversimplification, right? Like we are mobilizing, finding all of this solidarity and this idea of collective identity all by like clicking on a link or retweeting something or throwing a post up somewhere. It sounds like an oversimplification, but it's really not. I mean, when we think about it, a link that's pushed to somebody that leads to a petition now has another name on that petition. That's one more name than it didn't have prior. So that really is, you know, a way of mobilizing, building solidarity, and just helping to make a union stronger. So in the grand scheme of things, it may seem small, but it's a big deal. So why is social media important for unions? One of the other concepts to talk about is this idea of a collective identity. So in its original psychological context, the definition of a collective identity is the cognitive and affective aspects deriving from belonging to certain groups in which adolescents identify themselves and which place them within certain social categories such as ethnicity, nationality, or gender. But we're not really looking at this through a psychological lens at all. So what does this mean to us? The use of social media, it really enables this sense of belonging, which is kind of what we mean when we talk about a collective identity. It's a place that exists within the world of our workplaces or outside of our workplaces too, that gives community to workers despite all of the obstacles and boundaries that could otherwise potentially isolate and keep workers divided. Again, achieving a collective identity is more possible. Not that it wasn't possible before, but it's even more so possible because of Web 2.0 and this massive system of interconnectivity. So what can we use social media for? We can use it for information, include sharing and promoting information about union activities, campaigns, strikes, meetings, things of that nature. Engagement, of course, that's like the core founding, you know, principle of using social media successfully if you are trying to use it with intention to get something in a way. So engagement. Um, for a union, you know, it might include direct consultation with members on membership matters, grievance handling, regulation policy, collective bargaining. You know, I'm sitting here talking to a group of member leaders. We all know what we could use social media for. When we talk about engagement, we know already how we would possibly want to engage our members, but it looks different from local to local. Networking, of course, links to partnerships and building you know, relationships with other unions, other advocacy groups, or different types of community organizations, and education. This really includes providing timely access to research and other union publications. So key concepts when we're talking about using social media to build the union. Relationships are paramount, messaging, quality content and consistent engagement, and choosing the right platform. So what do we mean by relationships on social media? And why are relationships so important to using social media to build the union? So right there it says, relationships are the connections we make. Hold on, my screen is being blocked. Are the connections we make with others and the communities formed around them. And these relationships, again, they're paramount. We can't reasonably expect our members or our audience or whoever it may be that we are trying to reach on social media and communicate with on social media to actually answer our calls to action if we do not have this foundational relationship already in place and developed. These relationships, when they are already in place, they make it very difficult for the people we're communicating with and trying to reach to ignore them. It's much easier for people to kind of look at some kind of call to action, like, hey, we are gathering at so-and-so place at this time to show our, disapproval for whatever is happening, or to show our support for whatever group needs support. But it's very easy for me to look at that and say, well, why do I care? Who are these people? They don't really talk to us. They only post every so often, and I haven't seen anything by them in a month. So I'm just going to keep scrolling, move on to the next thing, whatever it may be. So again, the relationships we build on social media, again, they're the connections we make. They are incredibly important, and we really need to foster them as a union to make sure that when the time comes and we need to mobilize, we can do that. Messaging. Again, I'm talking to a group of member leaders and labor activists. I don't need to spend a lot of time on messaging, but messaging on social media is not much different than in a traditional campaign that's using messaging. You want to be clear, concise, relevant to the broader picture, and you want to make sure that we are creating a narrative of who, what, when, where, why, and how. Create a narrative of what we need, why we need it, and when we need it. A good example of that, Pat Knapp did earlier in the pandemic with We Need It Now. That was a good example of using messaging to tell the story of what is happening and to depict and paint this picture of what we need and how we need it. Quality content and consistent engagement. This kind of points back to the importance of building relationships. So the key to maintaining these relationships is to, again, continuing to post and make sure that what we're posting has some substance behind it. Also, quality content and consistent engagement helps build legitimacy. I have some notes on that, one sec. So, legitimacy. When we're thinking about building legitimacy, we should be thinking about something that happens organically, a member-driven issue that needs a response. When we're thinking about legitimacy, we think about it in a way that lets the public know that it's coming from the members and that the content and message is coming directly from the people who are dealing with the issue. So by allowing this network of social media users who are trying to build their union with online tools and social media platforms, it shows that there is a bottom-up effect happening here, and that the workers are the ones that are trying to communicate and trying to get through to the public the message that they are dealing with. And how do we do this? If we look at the screen here, we have a really good example from the PMA union. That is the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the union that is there for the staff. They have they're constantly posting updates on their Instagram of their battle with management and the world there and exactly what is happening. One of the big issues there right now, and just this is just from glancing at their social media, kind of just get a wide picture of what is happening. But you take 30 seconds and glance at their Instagram, you can see that one of the big issues that they're dealing with is this harassment policy there. So I know that if I go back to their social media or their Instagram page in a few days, I'll most likely see another update, if there has been an update, on what's going on with bargaining and the struggles that they're facing there. So this is a really good example of quality content and consistent engagement. And again, quality content on social media doesn't necessarily mean you have to be posting these amazing videos, like cinematic videos, or like, high quality photographic images. No, it's more so when we talk about quality, it's more so, does the content have any substance? And that's one thing to keep in mind when we're posting. Choosing the right platform. So this is also really important. You need to make sure you know where your audience is. If you are trying to reach a group of people who are fresh out of nursing school, fresh out of whatever college program that they went to, and they're now healthcare professionals, techs, whoever it may be, and they're most likely under 25. I probably wouldn't suggest Facebook. We would want to tailor our platform for a different demographic of people. But still, Facebook has a lot of good uses. For instance, group-oriented structures and events. Almost every local here has a Facebook page. And yeah, we can talk about why that may not necessarily be a great thing at all times. There's a bunch of different people, just slinging opinions everywhere, and some of them might be controversial or conflicting with, I guess, the overall group identity. But, I think the pros of a Facebook page for a local kind of outweigh that, and there are ways to manage that too. It's possible to just have moderators who can kind of close discussions or delete posts if it gets to be extreme in a way. But anyway, back to the group-oriented structures and events. That is, the better platform if you're looking to set up that kind of structure for your social media usage. Instagram is really good for infographics, videos, photos, and other types of visual media messaging elements. The We Need It Now campaign, it had photos and videos of people in their workplaces talking about what was going on and why they needed PPE right away, not tomorrow, but yesterday. And that's a good campaign to launch on Instagram. Twitter is good for starting conversation and generating support for principled conversations. I know that may not sound exactly like Twitter, but there really is. I mean, like most social medias, there's pockets of people who are not really interested in having any kind of constructive discussion. But I believe that on Twitter, you can actually have these really principled conversations where people are willing to engage you in a very, intellectual and constructive way. Not always at all, but it's there. Also, the other thing about Twitter compared to Facebook and Instagram is that you do tend to find more journalists, politicians, public figures who keep very active Twitter accounts. And if you tweet at some of these people, depending on what you're saying, there's a good chance that they will respond and will, pick up that discussion with you. And of course, these aren't the only social media platforms you can use. These tend to be the most popular and widely used. And depending on the content that you're posting, these will probably be one of your best bets. I don't think like Snapchat would probably be great for unions to build their people to build their unions with. I've thought about the idea of TikTok recently. I mean, I love TikTok. I try not to use it because it's a black hole, but I think that would be also a very interesting way. I'm not sure what that would look like yet, but maybe someone out there is using TikTok to build their local. So quick inoculation note. I have some notes on this too for my note. So digital versus traditional. So there are some amongst us that will say digital organizing simply cannot replace a face-to-face conversation, picking up the phone, knocking on someone's door and just having a conversation with them. And they are absolutely right. The traditional ways of how unions organize are, canonized in labor for a reason because they work. And, digital and traditional methods of organizing are not mutually exclusive. They work in concert together, really. And where one is lacking in a certain area, another has strengths. If we can talk about the recent campaign to unionize Amazon workers, and we can kind of analyze all of the places where they didn't do such a great job. And one of the main criticisms is their like complete reliance on social media and digital organizing to get the job done. And that kind of hurt them. And as someone who's sitting here right now advocating for using these tools as we go about our lives as leaders in the labor movement and activists and people who are trying to make things happen. I think that they went wrong there. During a pandemic, and especially for a fight that large and so critical, they probably shouldn't have used or relied on the tools, digital tools, as much as they have. So, what does this type of labor look like? I think that there are a lot of like conceptions about people who do this type of work. Influencers, influencers are, they're organizing you, whether we like it or not. I mean, but anyway, a lot of people may think that they're just sitting on their phones, clicking away, posting things. Well, that may be true, but it's still a lot of intensive labor to do that. And anytime that you are doing that, you are not doing the things that you should be doing for yourself, for your family, like most of us already know. So just keep that in mind if you are thinking like, I want to do this for my local. It's hard work and can be very challenging at times. To do it properly and with intent, it's not a thing you can pick up once and just put it down and come back to next week and expect results. And there is an element of emotional labor and digital fallout. That sounds very dramatic, but it can be really at times. There's a huge amount of emotional labor that goes into doing something like this. And what I mean by that is kind of when you're doing this, you're expected to field concerns from everywhere. If you post something that is slightly controversial, you're going to have hundreds of comments. I mean, depending on how big, of course, your account is and how many people are following you. But I see it all too often in these different spaces online and in social media where people, are attacked or criticized, or, if you want to say canceled. So it's important to keep that in mind as we try to use these tools to build our locals. Just be aware that there could be some kind of fallout if you plan on posting something controversial or something that is conflicting with the general consensus out there. And I believe I'm done for my part. Now, I'm going to kick it over to Megan Gordon. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, how are you guys? Thanks, Femi. My name's Megan Gorman. I am the communications specialist for PASNAP. I'm part of what we call the CPR team. That's communications, political, and research. So that means I work with Steve Morris, our political expert, and Matthew Cunningham Cook, our research specialist, to exert pressure outside the local, right? We pressure the boss and we inform the community about what locals are doing, what's going on in your local. And as the comm specialist, I do this through the press, but I also do it through social media. And so that's what I'm going to be talking to you guys about today. There'll be a lot of overlap between what Femi talked about and what I'll talk about, but the targets are different, right? Femi spoke about using social media to organize, and I'm going to talk about using social media to build your union's profile outside of your local. Okay, let's see. Okay, so people who are my age might say, why social media? They might be skeptical, at least initially, but all of you being union members, you have an inherent sense of what social media can do, because we form unions because we want a voice, right? We want our thoughts and opinions to be heard. Well, unions give us a voice, social media gives us a voice. So you guys should have an inherent understanding of why it's important. Social media gives us actually a loud voice. It gives us a megaphone. But it isn't just about broadcasting, right? It's about building relationships, post by post by post. That will happen inside your local. That's what Femi talked about, but it also can happen outside your local. You can read the script right there. The idea is to embrace social media as a tool and to drive non-members to your social media accounts. And by doing that, you'll be building and expanding your identity over and over and over again. So the mechanism is the same way you would build solidarity inside the local is the same way that you'll build your identity and your relationships outside the local. So when people talk about social media, they like to talk about brands. I'm sure you guys have heard that. Maybe you like to talk about brands, brand identity, brand awareness. Those are buzzwords, marketing staples. I imagine people in suits sitting around a conference room talk about brand identity. That's why I like to talk about stories. It's the same thing. It's just a different way to think about it. When you're creating a brand identity, all you're really doing is telling a story about yourself. You're crafting an image of yourself through the stories that you choose to tell through social media. The reason I like to talk about stories is because It's kind of a more visceral feel, right? And the idea of stories, when you think of a story, you think of someone telling a story and you think of someone receiving the story, right? So you always have that human element front and center. And that's what social media is. It's, you know, it's a high tech, I guess, form of expression, but at the root of it, it's about connecting people. So that's why I like to talk about stories. Okay, so it's pretty simple. I mean, yeah, there are an awful lot of rules, and you'll be working in a medium that forgets nothing ever, and that can be a little daunting, right? But it's a lot less daunting than what all of you do every day. So I don't know, I thought I'd run through 10 sort of tips and tricks. If it's too simple, you guys let me know, okay? And raise your hand or just kind of break in if you have an example or a question or something to say, all right? Okay, number one. Do prioritize your networks. It can be really tempting to set up a Facebook page, to start tweeting, to do an Instagram page, to Femi talked about TikTok, to exploring TikTok. It's really tempting to do all of that at once, and in many ways, they all kind of feed into each other. But I would advise not spreading yourself too thin. I would focus on one or two platforms you know best. That's probably going to be Facebook, which is the monster in the room. It's where, I mean, you are reaching a certain type of person, but you're reaching more people, exponentially more people with Facebook than you are with the other platforms. And also Facebook is all about connections, and that's what you want to create. There's a little plus down there. Facebook lets you edit a post once it's published. That's always, if you're me, that's a huge plus. So I would recommend Facebook first. Number two, and this is pretty basic, do complete your page before you start posting. All right, you wouldn't go on a date and not wear pants, right? So you shouldn't start posting on Facebook unless your page is complete. And by that, I mean, you have all your contact information up, and even more important, you have really compelling visuals, because the visuals are super important, and you want those. And you're in as a union that holds collective actions, you have great activist photos. Use them. If you don't happen to have them, call me and I will search the archives and we'll find something, okay? So this kind of goes without saying, you're gonna have to share thoughtfully. This is because social media has a long memory, right? You want to be proud, you want to be informative, you want to be emotive. I don't know how many of you saw Sarah Nelson's plenary speech today. She talked about that in her speech, which was actually really moving in and of itself. And we'll talk about more about that later. But you should always ask, does this post have value? Does it fit with my mission? Who is my audience? And am I really speaking to my audience? So you might want to ask yourself, who the heck is my audience? So let's talk about that. On Facebook, you're reaching 1.9 billion people. It's a monster. Most Facebook users are women. The average age is between 18 and 49 years old. Probably, I'm not sure, maybe that would mirror the makeup of your unions. And this is the really important one. 66% of active Facebook users use the platform daily. They're on it all the time. So that's your audience when you're using Facebook. And when you post on Facebook, you should always ask yourself, am I connecting with that person? If you're on Twitter, you're reaching about less than a quarter of the number of people on Facebook. But like Femi says, when you're on Twitter, you're reaching politicians, you're reaching the press. I use it quite a bit at PASNAP, and it's a different audience. Tweeters are mostly male and they're younger than Facebook users. And Instagram. Instagram kind of is in between Twitter and Facebook in terms of the number of users, although it still only has about half the number of people on Facebook. Most people who use Insta are women, and they are younger than Facebook users. Gen Z and millennials, they are on Instagram. Okay. So number 4, you should post regularly. That kind of goes without saying, I guess, but a good rule of thumb is to try to post once or twice or 3 times a week per platform, excuse me, just to keep your fresh content front and center. At PASNAP, I aim for 3 times a week. I don't always make it, to be honest, depending on what's going on. And sometimes I post way more than that, exponentially more. If you are doing some sort of collective action, it's a great time to post multiple times a day to keep people informed, and also to inform the community, the press, to inform, you know, people outside of your union what you guys are doing. The goal is just to keep the story flowing. So this is number 5 on my list, but really it should be almost number 1. I am a word person. For my entire professional life, I have worked with words as a magazine editor and writer, as a communications person for the Pennsylvania Democratic Caucus, and now as a comms person for you. But pictures matter more than words, because you have to capture somebody's attention, and our brains respond much more quickly to images and color. So photos are an irresistible draw. Be sure to include a photo, an icon, something visual, every post. And I'm talking about across platforms. We are an activist union. We are fighting the good fight. The best images are always active and evocative. They are moving. You are moving. You're not sitting around a conference table. You're out there advocating for yourselves, for your patients, and for your profession. Your post should show that. And of course, you can use video on any of the platforms. We're talking about Facebook because I thought that might be the best place to start. You can use video on Facebook whenever you can, but you can also use it on Instagram and Twitter. And this just sort of brings home that point. Tweets that feature images earn 150 more retweets than those that don't. They're liked 89% more, and they get 18% more clicks. I mean, there's just no comparison. And I hate to say that as a word person, but it's true. Of course, there's a caveat. Don't assume that words don't matter, because they do. The words help you create your narrative. The visuals draw people in, they catch people's attention, and then it's through the words that you tell people what you want them to know about yourself and who you are. And so always edit for grammatical and spelling errors. I mean, this is me putting on my pointy copy editor's hat. It's not a huge deal if you misspell something, but if you do it repeatedly, it just looks a little less put together. And it's also why the edit function exists in Instagram and Facebook. You cannot edit a tweet, but you can delete the tweet and start all over if you find you've made some kind of grave error. Don't capitalize words to lend them importance. Now, people do this so much that it's probably well on its way to being correct, but it's not correct, not yet. And it drives people like me a little bit crazy. And of course, don't ever write in all caps. I mean, I don't think I really need to explain this. I mean, it's shouty and sinister and alarming. And I would reserve all caps for, one word, like a word that's something that's really important. You might capitalize the really. So this brings up emotion. I mean, so much of us have so much incoming, right? We have emails, we have voicemails, we have Facebook, tweets, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and we also have the old school stuff too. We have television and newspapers and radio. We have a lot coming at us at warp speed, and you have to figure out a way to break through all that noise. And the way to do that is to be emotive, to be passionate and spirited. That's what Sarah Nelson talked about in her speech. I have a little sticky that is on the wall behind my computer, so I look at it every day. It says, emotion opens emails. It also draws people to tweets and, Facebook and any kind of media. So whenever you can reach somebody with passion and emotion, or I shouldn't put it that way, whenever you can put forth passion and emotion, your chances of reaching somebody are much, much higher than they would be otherwise. That said, don't be petty angry. Righteous anger against the boss, as it says here, is moving and persuasive. Petty anger isn't. It doesn't read well in print. It can be misinterpreted, and it really shouldn't be the tone you set with that shouldn't be the tone of the story you tell about yourself. And that's true in your own posts and in your replies to commenters. So once you are good with Facebook, let's assume you start there, you can use Facebook or whatever platform you started with to help you dip a toe and get dip a toe into using the other platforms as well. For instance, if you post something on Facebook and it has a fabulous photo, you can use that same photo and post something about the same event on Instagram. You can tweet something out about it. It's easy to start with Facebook because it is, you can edit it, like I said. And then once you've got it, you can move to Twitter or Instagram. You'll have to vary the message a little bit because if you're reaching the same people, it becomes boring, but also because, of course, the mediums are different. And Instagram is mostly photo and Twitter is very short words. So my advice would be, at least initially, don't sweat the numbers. Growing your network and building your social media profile are really long-term projects. So, and you'll be building relationships day by day by day. You're not going to amass a huge amount of supporters all at once. If you do, fantastic for you, but it's more likely that it'll be a slow build. So I would suggest not obsessing about the metrics. There is one trick that a friend of mine taught me. When someone comments on a Facebook post of yours, you can message the person and ask them to like your page. And that way your page likes will go up and you have a little bit of control over that, which is always good. So if you are going to be concerned about the numbers, then here's just a little bit of data about what the research says is the best days and times to post. I submit that the best days and times to post are the days and times that you can. I think frequency is more important than timing, but if you are into this on Facebook, apparently weekend posts between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. are seen more than any other time. Twitter is similar. Weekends with a little bigger time window. I believe it's between 1 and 5 p.m. is the optimal time on the weekends to tweet. And for Instagram, apparently Monday and Thursday, before and after work, and at 2 a.m. are the best times. So if you're up at 2 a.m., you might want to, do an Instagram post. So my last bit of advice is just have fun. Remember, you're writing your own story. It's not a doctoral thesis. It's a conversation. It's a relationship that you are creating. It's an identity. You get to put out what you think who you think you are. It's fun. And just like people, unions are multifaceted. So you get to explore a number of different facets of who you are and put them out there. If you remember that it should be fun and that it's just a story, it'll take, it'll take the pressure off, and it'll help you create a narrative that will draw people to you. Because, this is social media after all. That's the whole point. It's social. So that's it for my presentation. I thought we could open it up and just talk about everyone's experience with social media.
Folks, there's a couple ways that you could ask questions or comments. There's the chat that you could type in. You can choose who gets that comment. You can send it to a specific person or send it to everybody. You could use the reaction button to raise your hand, or you can just jump in if it seems like a good time to ask a question or make a comment.
Anybody have any questions, or anybody have any experiences with social media, within your locals or outside of it? I'm curious, Carlos, how much you post video, because your video for the House of Delegates was amazing. In fact, I'm going to be reaching out to you to get some pointers and ask you if you'll help me do something like that.
Well, we've been using our social media platforms at TAF for quite some time now. It's been years, and ever since I became president of this local, we saw the importance of keeping involved, keeping our members involved on more so just around contracts and negotiating. So, it's a good way to keep everybody informed. Every once in a while, I have the Live Off Fives, in which I criticize and give fabulous awards to all the bad managers, and just inform the members of what we do, how we do it. We have Q&As, and we just try to keep people as motivated and involved as possible. I just think that everything. First of all, I want to say thank you both for having this class, because this is something that's very important to all locals when it comes to building an identity and engagement. A lot of people complain about our members not being involved and engaged, but this is how you keep them involved and engaged, by giving them a platform and giving them a voice.
Right.
And I think most importantly, one of the things I would like to suggest and hopefully bring forward to a lot of the locals is soul searching for that identity. PASNAP is such a great, large organization that has a lot of unique locals and diversity within all the different hospitals. Mm-hmm. And it will be nice eventually if we have all the different platforms and all the different organizations sponsored, and just having that symbolism that shows who TAP is at Temple, who Mercy is at Mercy. And, you know, having that unique bond with the members is going to be important to everything we do.
I agree. Tammy, do you guys use social media out west?
We do. We've been using it for 3, 4 or more years as well. Ours is a private page. So it's not like branding our union. It's a private page so that members can feel that they can ask questions and get answers. And, you know, it's wonderful during contract time. And when it's not contract time, you know, we try to ramp up just trying to keep people involved. We're a year away from contract time. So right now, every week I'm going through and posting a different section of the contract and drumming up conversation about what's good with it, what's bad with it, you know, what can we change? What are your ideas? Just trying to drum up some, you know, conversation amongst the members right now. So we use that. And then, you know, I live in an area where you know, we're very rural. Not everybody does social media. Not everybody likes social media. So we also utilize Band just so, you know, they don't have to be social media, but if they have a device, they can still get on and get information, you know, and I can still tell them meeting dates and times, activities, whatever's going on through Band as well.
Okay. So we got a question from Deborah. Oh, how do you change posts from mostly disgruntled to positive posts? Deborah, did you mean, you know, comments that people are making or the posts themselves?
Unmute. Mostly disgruntled. I'm sorry. Mostly disgruntled. It's usually complaints. And I mean, I understand that that's a platform for presenting issues, but I would like to see some positive things sometimes, you know, acknowledging things that are happening, things that, you know, coworkers are doing, so that when you go on, you know, yes, you can see some of the issues, but you can also celebrate some of the successes. And I think that we're struggling with that part of making things more positive.
Well, I think someone just has to start it.
Yeah,
Right?
Deborah, you are the change you want.
Yes.
You're never going to be able to change everybody's opinions and thoughts, complaints. But I think that engaging people in a meaningful way, you know, trying to have that conversation, while it may not completely get them on your side, I think that something positive could come out of it. And, you know, if you're posting things that it's important, and what you're saying is important, right? It's morale, it is everything that we need to stay motivated. So I would suggest post those things that you want to see, post the great things, post the little victories, big victories, all of it.
Remember, it's a collective, right? It's not just one post. So if you start to post positive things every now and then, I mean, that's not to take away from, like Amy said, the issues that are brought up are important, whether they're positive or negative. But if you just change the tenor of the collective the littlest bit, it might feel different. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Absolutely.
even if you do something sort of easy and silly, like, I don't know if people still do Throwback Thursday, but you might post like a photo of an old strike or action and get people to comment on that. That's not going to be, that doesn't take a lot of effort. And if you have a few negative posts in a row, that breaks it up, right? Sometimes you just need to change the tenor a little bit.
Thank
I have a
you.
question.
Sure. Go for it.
Hi, we are in the process of forming a retiree group. And I would like to be able to put it out there to more people. So what do you suggest is the first step that I should do using social media?
I think you should do Facebook. It's the right age group, and you're hitting the most people, and it's easy to use. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I agree. I think the first step is making a Facebook group, coming up with a name, and that kind of builds on what Carlos was saying. That helps create an identity around the group that you want to start, promoting and attracting people to. So, if you guys don't already have a name, make a name, create a Facebook group, and then start inviting people who you think would fit that category.
Femi is a really talented graphic artist, and creating a name and an icon, if you don't have a photograph, is a really powerful thing.
Okay,
It's what you did with the Department of Health order stuff. So I think that would be the best way. And you don't have to, if I were you, I would start thinking about it, thinking about a name, talking to other people, and then create a page. You know what I mean? Don't create a page before you have decided who you are,
yes.
There's another question here that says, do you recommend multiple member leaders running the accounts or one dedicated person? Me personally, I think we should have a dedicated person who is managing these things. Again, like to the point I made earlier, these things tend to take up a lot of time and effort if you are going to try and use social media as a way to achieve something. There should definitely be a dedicated person. But if that's not possible, then it's not a bad idea to have multiple member leaders handling it. But at least one person should kind of at least have a general oversight of it. How do you?
If you're talking about building strength within a union and presenting a face outside of it, those are two different things. I would recommend for the outward facing part, 1 or 2 or 3, just a few people at most who have who post. Do you know what I mean? That way you get a consistent message. If you share it with somebody, the burden is less on the one person. But what you don't want is to have 107 people, all of whom have a little bit of a different idea of what you want to put forward. I mean, the ideas should be collective, but I think it's safer, since we're talking about platforms with really long memories, safer to have 1 or 2 or 3 people be the conduit.
Peg, you have your hand raised?
Can I ask a question again? I'm sorry. So if you're having someone who is managing the platform, if someone wants to post, do they send the post for approval and then it's posted? Or, I mean, currently our Facebook page is a closed page, but anybody can post on it.
I mean,
And, which I think, we seem to get a lot more activity when there's something of a more negative nature that people are.
so Facebook, I think, is in my opinion, I think Facebook is different than a lot of the other platforms because it kind of really promotes this community group setting. So for
Right.
locals Facebook page, I think it's fine to have anyone post whatever. Sometimes, especially if it's a closed page,
Right.
I think it's a lot safer. But I do think that one of the member leaders, maybe an executive board member, should be a moderator on that Facebook page, so they can make sure that things aren't getting out of hand, there's nothing inflammatory being said, or people aren't attacking each other, because that can happen.
Right.
But if,
That really isn't an issue, the attacking, but it would be nice to also have some positivity. And I guess that's what I'm really looking for. I know that we all know the issues and we're working on those issues. But a daily post of negativism really turns a lot of people away from turning to the page, because they're like, oh,
Right.
I hear all negative things all the time. So I don't even bother.
I
So,
understand.
you know,
We have 2 more hands raised. Want to get to them really quickly. Peg
Thank
and
you.
then Kate. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, hi. I didn't know how to unraise my hand or put my hand down, Femi, but you and Megan actually hit on what I wanted to comment anyhow, which was exactly this about the negativity and having something positive on the page. I run the page for the local at Einstein, and I agree with you that the negative kind of management bashing comments really gets people fired up and gets more people commenting. And then there are some people who, have commented here and there that they don't like that. They get tired of seeing that constantly on there, that they think it should just be more of an informational page. And it's a fine line to walk, when you're kind of trying to manage that. Because you want people to be fired up at times about management, and it has to work to your advantage. But I think what I did a couple of times when I felt that was palpable really was I tried to tag somebody specific, like, hey, let's take note of our fabulous nurses across the hospital who are doing great work. I'll go first. And I named one particular nurse. And just kind of said a couple things that I knew about him. And I did it another day about, another nurse that I knew. And then a couple other people joined in and did the same thing. And then people commented like, oh, wow, this is great. Like, this is so nice to see. So we did that. And then, here and there, I try to post just like a positive story that I see in the news, something that isn't political or, kind of going to start fires, and maybe even like a funny little meme or something that I see. Again, you got to kind of watch what the memes are, and who's offended by certain things and who isn't. But, generally, if it's something about, like I work in the ER, so I would maybe post something like, oh, the ER when they're calling report up to the floors, and hopefully we can have like a lighthearted little laugh about something like that. So that's just something that I try to do here and there on the Facebook page.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah, really quickly, I was going to say Peg and Carlos, those are the TAP and Einstein. Those are the 2 Facebook pages I've been exposed to. I haven't really seen or interacted with a lot of other locals pages, but they do a fantastic job at engaging those pages and just keeping people informed and keeping the conversation going. So thank you guys very much for doing what you do on top
Yes.
of running unions. So again, thank you. Caitlin?
Well, just real quick, we don't have social media at all at Wells. We, I guess, have been a little dated. We still do flyers and things of that nature. What would be the benefit to having a public page versus private for just members? And what should we gear towards with starting something?
Well, you don't really have to choose. I mean, you can do them in succession. You don't have to do them both at once. I would start with a members group. What would you say?
I mean, so the pros and cons of a public and a private page. So the pros of a public page is that it's easily accessible for everyone. It allows other people who are not necessarily in your local, maybe advocates or community organizations, whatever it may be, who may be able to identify with your cause. It allows them to kind of participate in that discussion versus a private page where you kind of close off that access to the outside world.
True.
But still, the pros of a private page is it's private. You and your members can feel free. It's a safe space, right? You and your members can feel free to really be honest and truthful with like their experiences and interactions in the workplace. And some people may not like that if it's an open page. People are always nervous.
Right.
Going to see
Can
this.
you go back and forth? Like if we were in a contract negotiation time, can we make our page, like Facebook specifically, make it private?
I'm like 99% sure you can make it.
And because I know on Instagram you can do that. You can turn your account, public versus private. Just so we could use it as a tool during that time for communicating to one another.
You definitely can.
Yeah, and flyers are great, by the way.
Yeah, flyers.
I mean, this is.
I
this-
like them. There's
Right.
nothing like putting something in someone's hand. There's no excuse. It's in front of you now.
And again,
Yes.
like, I hope that I was able to get across the point that this is not to replace anything.
No.
This is
Okay.
not in lieu of anything. This is just, a supportive measure. And again, it works in concert with everything we normally do.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're sort of at the end of our time. Does anybody have any other questions or comments or experiences they want to share? No?
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you have any questions for Femi or myself, we're always available. And I don't know, I look forward to seeing your stuff online.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
Everyone.